Welcome back to Talk Tickers, where we break down these earnings calls so you don't have to. Today we're going to be diving deep into Rollins.
The pest control giant.
Exactly. Think termites, rodents, all that fun stuff. They just wrapped up their fiscal year 2024.
And the numbers are buzzing.
They certainly are.
Rollins closed out the year with a record $3.4 billion in revenue.
Yeah, it's a 10.3% jump year over year.
That kind of growth in this economy, really impressive.
It makes you wonder if they're sort of recession-proof in a way. I mean, people might cut back on other things.
But roaches, not so much.
Yeah, got to get rid of the roaches. But it wasn't just revenue, right? I mean, profits were up too.
Right. Earnings were up 7.9% for the year.
Wow.
And if you look at adjusted earnings per share, those soared 11.2%. So they're growing the top line and becoming more profitable at the same time.
Okay, so let's break down these numbers a little bit. $3.4 billion. It's not just a record for Rollins, but it kind of puts them in a whole new league.
Exactly. And what's really interesting is how much of that is organic growth. We're not just talking about acquisitions here. Their core business is thriving. 7.9% organic growth for the full year, even hitting 8.5% in Q4.
Yeah, very impressive.
Yeah.
And, this commitment to growth isn't just about acquisitions. They're also making really smart moves when it comes to their workforce, which, as you know, is so crucial in this industry. And it looks like they're really focusing on retention, especially for newer team members.
Absolutely. I think that's key in an industry that's so dependent on skilled labor. They've rolled out enhanced onboarding and training programs, which should help reduce turnover and ultimately, lead to better customer satisfaction.
Yeah, it's all about creating that positive feedback loop.
Right.
Happy employees, happy customers, ultimately happy shareholders.
Exactly. Speaking of happy shareholders, Rollins has a pretty solid track record when it comes to M&A.
Yeah.
They successfully closed 44 tuck-in acquisitions in 2024.
Wow, 44.
And they're signaling that there's more to come.
That's a lot of tuck-ins. It makes you wonder, are they going after a particular niche or just consolidating the market wherever they can?
That's a great question, and it'll be interesting to see what their M&A strategy looks like going forward. Will they stay focused on smaller regional players, or will they make a move for a bigger competitor?
Yeah.
They certainly have the financial firepower to do so, especially with those new investment-grade credit ratings from Fitch and S&P.
That's got to be a huge boost for them, giving them access to cheaper capital and more flexibility. It seems like they're really playing the long game here, not just chasing those short-term profits.
Absolutely. They're investing heavily in growth initiatives, whether it's M&A, building up their sales force, or even focusing on safety training for their drivers.
Speaking of safety, it looks like they revamped their onboarding program to include enhanced safety training, especially for drivers. Seems like they're trying to get ahead of any potential issues and build a culture of safety from day one.
It's a smart move, both from a risk management perspective and a cost-saving one. Fewer accidents mean lower insurance premiums and less downtime, which ultimately benefits their bottom line.
Makes sense. So we've got a company with record revenue, strong organic growth, robust M&A strategy, a focus on employee development and safety, and now even easier access to capital. What's not to like?
Well, no investment is without its risks.
Right.
And we'll dig into some of those in the next segment, but on the surface, Rollins is looking pretty strong right now.
Yeah, they really are.
Yeah.
We'll be back after a quick break to discuss their performance in different market segments, including residential and commercial, and we'll talk about what it all means for investors. Stay tuned.
Welcome back to Talk Tickers.
All right, so we know their overall revenue is booming, but where are those gains coming from? Let's start with residential pest control. That's kind of the bread and butter for a lot of these pest control companies.
Yeah, residential pest control saw solid organic growth, 6.5% in Q4.
Okay.
Driven largely by increased demand for rodent control.
True.
It seems like nobody wants to share their space with unwanted guests, especially as we head into those colder months.
Yeah, you can't blame people for wanting to keep those critters out. But are they just benefiting from, kind of a temporary surge in demand, or is this growth sustainable?
Well, the CEO actually mentioned a study during the earnings call that highlighted the growing rodent populations in urban centers.
Interesting.
And if that trend continues, Rollins is well positioned to capitalize on it.
Yeah.
They've got the expertise, the infrastructure, the brand recognition to really dominate this market.
So it's not just about rats and mice, though.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, they offer a whole range of residential pest control services.
Right, from termites to mosquitoes to general pest control, they cover it all.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not just relying on traditional methods either, they're investing in technology,
No.
using data analytics to better understand pest behavior and develop more targeted treatments.
That's interesting. So they're not just sending out technicians to spray everything in sight, they're actually being more strategic about it.
Exactly. They're using technology to improve their efficiency, which ultimately translates to better service for their customers
Yeah.
and potentially higher margins for the company.
Okay, now let's shift gears and talk about their commercial pest control business.
Yeah.
How are they performing in that segment?
Their commercial division is firing on all cylinders.
Right.
They saw strong double-digit growth in this segment, driven by both new customer acquisitions and expanded services for existing clients.
Okay, but the commercial market is very different from residential. What are they doing to attract and retain those larger business clients?
Well, they've created a dedicated commercial sales force, boosting it by 15% last year.
Wow.
They're also tailoring their services to meet the specific needs of businesses, whether it's restaurants, hotels, or office buildings.
So it sounds like they're not just trying to be a one-size-fits-all solution, they're really segmenting the market and developing customized offerings.
Exactly. They're leveraging their size and expertise to offer a comprehensive suite of services. Everything from pest prevention to sanitation to compliance with industry regulations.
So they're not just killing bugs, they're becoming a trusted partner for businesses, helping them manage a whole range of risks.
That's the idea, and I think that's a smart strategy in a market that's becoming increasingly competitive.
Now, earlier we talked about the fact that Rollins is investing heavily in its workforce. But how does that actually translate to better performance in the field?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
It's not just about hiring more people, it's about investing in their training and development.
Right.
Rollins is focusing on building a team of highly skilled technicians who can diagnose pest problems, implement the most effective treatments, and also educate their customers on preventative measures.
So it's about empowering their employees to be more than just exterminators. They're almost becoming like consultants.
Exactly, and that expertise builds trust with customers, whether it's a homeowner dealing with a termite infestation or a business owner trying to maintain a pest-free environment.
That makes sense. This all sounds very positive. But are there any potential headwinds or challenges that investors should be aware of?
Well, like any business, they're not immune to economic fluctuations.
Sure.
Inflationary pressures could impact their costs,
Right.
and a slowdown in construction could potentially impact their commercial business.
That's true. And they did mention some headwinds related to auto claims in the last quarter.
Right.
It seems like those legacy claims are still lingering.
Right, but they're taking steps to mitigate that risk by investing in driver training, safety technology, and a more robust safety culture overall. It might take time for those efforts to fully reflect in their financials, but it's definitely something they're taking seriously.
So we've got strong performance in both residential and commercial, a commitment to employee development, and a proactive approach to managing risks. Overall, I'm getting a pretty positive vibe from Rollins.
Me too. And they're executing well on their strategy, and they seem to be well positioned for continued growth in the years to come.
Right.
Of course, no investment is without its risks,
Yeah.
but Rollins seems to be ticking all the right boxes.
Now let's shift gears and talk about their financials, specifically their recent investment-grade credit rating and how that might impact their future growth strategy. We'll be right back after a short break. Welcome back to Talk Tickers. We've been unpacking Rollins' recent success, but let's zoom out a bit and talk about the bigger picture. What are some of the long-term trends shaping the pest control industry, and how is Rollins positioned to navigate them?
Well, one trend that's impossible to ignore is the increasing urbanization of the world's population.
Right.
As more people move to cities, the demand for pest control services is likely to rise. And Rollins, with its strong presence in major metropolitan areas, is well positioned to benefit from that trend.
So they're not just chasing rats and roaches, they're chasing demographic shifts too.
Exactly, and they're also ahead of the curve when it comes to technology.
Yeah.
They're investing in data analytics, connected devices, and other innovations that are changing the way pest control is delivered.
You mentioned data analytics earlier. Can you give me a concrete example of how they're using that to improve their services?
Sure. Imagine a scenario where a technician visits a home and notices signs of termite activity.
Okay.
Instead of just treating the immediate area, they can now use data from sensors and other sources to map out the entire termite colony,
Wow.
allowing them to develop a more targeted and effective treatment plan.
That's pretty impressive. It's like they're taking a data-driven approach to pest control, not just relying on intuition or experience.
Right. And that data can also be used to personalize their services.
Oh, okay.
For example, they can track a customer's pest history and develop a preventative maintenance plan tailored to their specific needs.
So it sounds like they're moving beyond just reactive pest control to a more proactive, data-driven approach.
Exactly. And that's what's going to set them apart in the long run. The pest control industry is becoming increasingly competitive, but companies that embrace technology and innovation are the ones that are going to thrive.
We've talked a lot about their growth strategy, but what about their financial health? We touched on those new investment-grade credit ratings, but what does it actually mean for investors?
Those ratings are a big deal. It means they have access to cheaper capital,
Okay.
which gives them more flexibility to invest in growth, whether it's through acquisitions, new technology, or expanding into new markets.
So they're not just growing, they're growing smartly.
Right, and they're also returning value to shareholders. They have a solid track record of dividend payments, and those are likely to continue as they continue to generate strong cash flow.
Okay, so before we wrap up, let's indulge in our This Is Not Financial Advice segment, all right, where we brainstorm an outrageous but plausible trade idea inspired by Rollins' success.
Sounds fun. Let's hear it.
Okay, hear me out. If Rollins is this good at dominating the pest control market in the U.S.,
Yeah.
imagine the potential in emerging markets where pest problems can be even more severe.
Right.
What if they partnered with a global consumer goods company like Unilever to distribute their products and services in new markets?
That's an interesting idea. Unilever already has a vast distribution network in emerging markets, and they're looking for ways to expand into new categories.
Right.
Pest control could be a natural fit.
Exactly. It could be a win-win for both companies.
Yeah.
Rollins gets access to new markets, and Unilever taps into a growing and profitable industry.
Of course, there would be challenges to overcome,
Yeah.
like regulatory hurdles and cultural differences, but the potential upside is huge.
Agreed. It's just a thought experiment, but it highlights the kind of innovative thinking that could drive Rollins' growth in the years to come. They're not just a pest control company, they're a growth company.
Well said, they're definitely a company to watch.
And that wraps up our deep dive into Rollins. As always, this is not financial advice. Do your own research, talk to your financial advisor, and make informed investment decisions based on your individual circumstances.
Thanks for listening to Talk Tickers. We'll be back soon with another earnings call deep dive.